Hello and welcome. My name is Bernadette. I'm the current student advisor for the American Viniyoga Institute. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today. For anyone who's watching, I'm here today with my dear friend and colleague, Shobha, who is going to share some of her experience with us about going through Viniyoga training and being on the Viniyoga path. So thank you so much, Shobha, for joining me today. And so Shobha is a graduate of both of the American Viniyoga Institute's programs, the Foundations Program and the Clinical Applications Program. So she's a fully certified Viniyoga teacher and yoga therapist with AVI. And Shobha, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit before we get into it.
Thank you, Bernadette, for your kind introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you to share some of my experiences in my journey as a student, as a practitioner, and currently as a teacher of yoga. They are not distinct paths. I continue to be a student, I continue to be a practitioner, and therefore, that allows me to be a teacher as well. A little bit about me. I came to the path of yoga in a sort of a roundabout way. Growing up in India, my great-grandfather was, an Ayurvedic practitioner, not for somebody else. He used to treat himself. So he used to practice Ayurveda in his everyday life, and his wellness practices, sort of inspired me at a very young age. I chose to follow a career in biological sciences, and I went about the research route. Did my PhD when I came to this country in '92, and then, along the way, I kind of realized that, that it would better serve my purpose to be not as a bench scientist, but rather as somebody who can work with people. So then, with my kids and life changes, I kind of got off the actual the career track and started first as a yoga practitioner, then went through some teacher trainings, and then finally, after all these years, I have been able to sort of come a full circle, and I am so happy that I'm a student of this lineage, and it has enriched me in so many ways that we will be talking about.
Mm-hmm. I love just one of the first things that you mentioned too, Shobha, is that you consider yourself first a yoga practitioner and a student of yoga. And I think that's something really important in the Viniyoga lineage, that we all kind of consider ourselves, and something that Gary, our teacher, Gary Kraftsow, has instilled in us, is that not only do we get to be a yoga practitioner first, but then it serves us as teachers, right? And one of his main things that we've heard him say so many times is that we can't give what we don't have. So when we consider ourselves, a practitioner and student of yoga first and foremost, and then sort of secondary comes teacher and yoga therapist, it's like a gift to us that we have, and it's a gift to our students. So I just love that you mentioned that as well. So thank you for pointing that out. So I guess my first question for you, Shobha, and I think many of us find ourselves on the yoga path before we find Viniyoga, myself included. And I know you had done some teacher training before you found the Viniyoga path. So how did you find Gary and the American Viniyoga Institute, and how did you find Viniyoga in general?
That's a good question. So back in 2010, after I completed my my first 200-hour teacher training, and after practicing for a few years and then teaching a little bit, for small groups, I realized that, first of all, I am not somebody who kind of fits in the American yoga scene of a very, which is very form-centric and something that you can sort of put yourself out there and be able to be in social media and things like that. So, this form-centric structural practice that was very much based on precise alignment, and if you could not get into that alignment, then use props so that you can kind of get yourself into that alignment. it somehow didn't sit very well with me, because pretty soon I realized that this was feeding into my dysfunctional pattern of being a perfect. And I found myself constantly like second guessing myself and being somewhat overcritical, I would say, and very judgmental of my practice, which is very contrary to what yoga is all about. So it was a constant feeling of being like incomplete. Now, fortunately, in those days, I'm talking about in like 2010, 11, 12 time period, print journal was common. So yoga journal was something that I used to subscribe to. And they had also introduced, I think for the first time, an online 21-day challenge. So, and that was the turning point in some sense, because I found 2 short practices, in the morning that Kate Holcomb actually introduced 20-minute practices that were an AM and an evening, settled down for the evening practice. And Kate was a student of Desi Kachar, and I found those practices very helpful. So I really felt grounded. I felt less judgmental of my own practice. And it was actually a gateway for a deeper exploration. So, and then, that used to be my go-to practice, even though I was teaching, form-centric practices, which was, I wouldn't classify it as Iyengar yoga, what I was teaching, but it was very much influenced by, using props and trying to get people, to do a triangle pose in a certain way, and, using, all kinds of belts and those kinds of things to kind of, encourage people to be in a certain structural, posture or position. And the other one, which was vinyasa flow, really did not sit well with my nature, because it would make me extremely airy-fairy, like hyper, things like that. So that was my initial experience with doing a breath-centric practice. And then in 2015, I live in California, so I happened to be at Mount Madonna, where AVI had their trainings regularly. So, and I happened to be at the temple, and then I kind of walked around the campus, and I saw Gary teaching in the big conference, the retreat center. And in an impulse, I think I just kind of blurted out loudly saying, I really want to study. I really want to study with him. But I had never taken any workshops with Gary. I had never, at that point, I did not even know what Viniyoga was. So I just came back and I did a search, and then, I found the name Gary Kraftsow, and then American Viniyoga Institute. And then I sent an email to Donna Robinson, who was the previous student coordinator. And I said, I'm really interested in teaching. And I think at that point, they had already started the process for the next teacher training. And I think I'd already maybe missed out on the pre-training homework, but she said, okay, you can still join and you can, get it done. And so that's how I kind of hopped onto that wagon at that point.
Wow. So you saw Gary at Mount Madonna. I can't believe I've never heard this story from you. This is amazing.
It's one of those things that it kind of even now gives me goosebumps when I think about it, because it was just such a life-changing moment in some sense. Just the fact that I saw him, he was sitting in his usual, looking at the students and having this big, the board in which he used to draw the sequences and things like that. And then of course the PowerPoint background and stuff. And I was like, I just happened to glance once through the big window, and I said, I really have to study with him. That was how it.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can say that there's something about how, the ultimate light kind of guided me in that direction, I would say. The universe guided me in that direction.
Sure. What an amazing story. Wow. I love that. And I think you brought up a really great point too about being a yoga perfectionist and trying to fit into that box of yoga. And I think that that's one of the other huge gifts of Viniyoga is just the methods and the principles kind of help us unlearn some of those dogmatic views about yoga so that it fits into our lives rather than us trying to fit into some yoga box. And I had, a very similar experience as well after I had, done my original 200-hour training, and which was a great training. I loved it. But I felt like not a good enough yogi or something all the time. And as I became a Viniyoga practitioner and eventually teacher and stuff, we learned that it's not about the yoga, it's about the people, right? So I just love that you mentioned that as well.
Yeah. That's
story.
Sorry to
No.
interrupt. There is a little story that I used to actually ask my kids yoga class. I would, in one of the first classes, I would say, in your view, what is yoga? And kids used to say, poses, and then they would say, meditation or breathing or being quiet and things like that. And I would always start my classes for them, a kids yoga series with a story that's sort of in the Indian, story, setup, where there was this king or a Raja who had an elephant in his palace. And there were 6 blind men who really wanted to see what an elephant was. And with the help of their friend, they came. And so the friend said, this is the elephant. And each one touched a part of the body. The guy who touched the ear said, oh, an elephant is like a fan. And the one who touched the leg said, oh, it's like a pillar. And the one who touched the side would say, no, it is like a wall. And somebody who touched the tail said, no, it's like a rope. And then the guy who touched the trunk said, no, it seems like a snake or a hose or something like that. And then they used to have this commotion. They would be like fighting. No, I'm right. And finally the king says, put it all together. It's actually the whole thing. So yoga is like that. It's not just asana. It's not just breath work. It's not just meditation. So if you really look at it, it's got 8 parts to it, right? It's the Ashtanga yoga. So they used to be fascinated by that story, like, oh, it's not just this so kind of thing. So I kind of digress, sorry, but that that story always comes to my mind whenever I think about like, what is yoga?
Yeah.
What is this all about?
That's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was great. Okay, so that kind of leads us in just what we've been talking about. And we had talked about this earlier, Shobha, about how, you're a mom, and for many years you had this big career, and once you learned how, you were able to like fit the yoga into your life in bits and pieces. So I would just love to hear how that has gone for you and how that has served you just as a practitioner, and particularly since you started practicing Viniyoga. Like, what does that look like as you go through these life phases with your kids and your family and stuff like that?
Okay, that's actually this is a good question, because it really sort of made me reflect a little bit about what it really meant to me at that point of my life and what it is right now. So first of all, I felt that a yoga practice has to be integrated into your everyday life. So initially what happened was, when you do this form-centric practice, and then growing up in India, I used to have a regular, chanting, prayer sort of practice. And, when you are stressed for time, you have to sort of pick between things. Mm-hmm. And then I found that it was hard for me to let go of my, chanting, prayer kind of thing. But at the same time, if I didn't do a structural practice, I felt I had all these aches and pains and not being fully available. So that was the challenge that I had. And one of the things very early on in my Viniyoga practice, as soon as we got into the training, within a session or so, I realized that, you can do breath and movement and use that with sound. So I used to use the chanting as a way to, sort of count, in my pranayama. I was not very happy with counting, as inhale to 4, exhale to 6 and all that. So I would just chant one line of my prayer on the inhale and then another line on the exhale. So it became very much second nature. So the ability to actually do all these three in the same practice, I can tell you that was a real gift. I mean, it was a real gift, being a mom, being a caregiver, and also a teacher, and trying to, and a conductor of my personal life symphony. Time was. So self-care always takes a backseat when you are trying to do everything. There will be days when I cannot do any physical practice, but then being able to do just some breath-centric movement while I was cooking or while I was waiting at my kids' classes, or in the, when they are at basketball or something like that. So that those sort of adapted practices, they really helped me a lot. It helped me take care of my stiffness in the neck and the shoulder and the upper back. Basically just kind of like dusting and cleansing, every day, like how you would do, so that you are not accumulating tension to the point where the muscles sort of cramp up and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So just standing and taking a few conscious breaths and observing the change in the shape of the spine, that was just so revealing. And it helped me stabilize my energy. So if I felt really like wiped out, I could do a short, breath practice, focusing on, like a gentle back bending action, even in a seated position. And that would kind of help to restore some balance and bring me out of that slump. I didn't have to rely so much on like coffee and chocolate, and which used to be my go-to things before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it helped me improve focus, sleep was a lot better, digestion. So these little things that overall change the quality of your life. So that was the thing. And then being so connected with, with your breath, it allowed me to create a sort of a breath boundary. So what that does is that it helps to sort of restrict or rein in one's mind from being dragged into the past or being hijacked into the future. Now that was the real gift of being present. So every time I connected with my breath, I could really sort of bring myself to that moment. And then I learned from my senior teachers and mentors that when you link breath to awareness and breath to movement, you start to move with awareness. And where breath is the link. Now that I thought was the definition of yoga for me. When you can actually move with awareness using your breath as the bridge or the link, I think that brings awareness to movement, to thought and action. And the breath actually serves like an internal mirror of sorts. It kind of gives you, it's your inner teacher. You don't really need to go looking for something else. If your breath is shallow, then it's kind of suggesting something. If it is rapid, then it's suggesting something else. But you don't go striving for a certain thing. You sort of arrive there. So, and then I would like to actually say something else about these trainings. I'd like to say that they are actually a great, great opportunity for personal inner transformation. Okay. Every breath and every practice, now whether it's on the mat or whether it's in your daily life, it's actually a beautiful opportunity for you to choose to be a better version of yourself. So in that way, it is so empowering. You cannot get that in anything else. In no college degree that I have had gave me that sort of a sense of, okay, I'm enough. I can do this to the extent that, and I can always try to improve a little bit, whether it's being a mom, being a teacher, whatever it is, how I show up in everyday life. I think that just kind of blew me away. So when your space is clear, then you can be the channel for the flow of these teachings. And that's when you become a teacher. That's when that's when it is authentic. So your role as a practitioner, as a student, is to just keep doing this with the right attitude, I would say. not as a performance, not to, prove anything to anybody. So that way you become clear and you become the channel through which these teachings flow. So I am so grateful to all the teachers who have walked in this path before me, before us, and who embody these teachings of the Yoga Sutras and other texts, ancient texts. And, definitely my greatest and the deepest gratitude to Sri Krishnamacharya and Sri Desikachar and our senior teachers like Gary. I mean, he's a beautiful, shining example for making these practices available, adaptable, and applicable to life today.
It's so true. Thank you so much, Shobha, for all these beautiful comments. And I think this gives folks really such a wonderful understanding of how just these trainings can really so impact your life. And
yeah, even if you choose not to ever teach or not to ever be a therapist or whatever, just the fact that you have this, I don't like to call it a toolbox, to be honest. You have these powers, these magical powers or gifts you can unwrap that gift at any time. It's available to you, right? So I think, what can be more precious in life? I think everybody, if I had the choice, I would say everybody should at least experience these kind of practices once with an open mind, and then see for themselves if this is something that they want to follow, if that's a path that they want to walk in. I just think that the journey is so beautiful, and I think the destination, regardless of where it is, it's always going to be, you will arrive at a place better than where you are right now. That's for sure.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Oh my goodness. There is so much magic and power in Viniyoga. You're so right. Well, Shobha, thank you.
The key is the practices are available, they're adaptable, and they are applicable to everyday life, every age, stage of life. So if you have any reluctance at all as to whether this is an investment that's worth, I think I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, me too. Oh, Shobha, well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and all of your beautiful comments about just how Viniyoga has impacted your life. And as always, it's so great to see you, my dear friend. And I'll just sign off by saying we are really excited to welcome the next round of students for the Viniyoga Foundations Program this summer and fall. So if anyone's interested, please go to viniyoga.com/train for more information. And Shobha, thank you again so much for.
I think they are a bunch. I think they are a lucky bunch of people. I think they will really see the magic of it. So best wishes. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I wish you the best and wish all the those out there with the intention to explore this the very best. I think let the breath guide your thoughts, your actions, and your choices.
Thank you so much, Shobha. All right, everyone, we're going to sign off. Thank you for joining. And any questions, you just leave us a comment.